Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Game Time Discussions. My name is Cameron here with Emery, and this time we are going to go over the top defensive prospects you can expect in the 2025 NFL draft class and the biggest prospects in the nation for this upcoming college football season.
Yeah, we're really excited. I'm a defensive guy, and so this video gets me excited. It also gets me an opportunity to kind of think of who I need to watch as the season goes on, and kind of just be up like I'm watching a Notre Dame game, and I just want to see this guy right now. You know what I mean? Pay attention for that stuff too. So yeah, let's just jump into it. Defensive tackles, by far better than the last defensive tackle class. It is night and day. You got Mason Graham to start it off. He right now is number 3 on the PFF big board. Kind of tells you the difference. I think our top interior defensive lineman last year was 15-ish probably. And he's not even the only one in the top 10. So yeah, Mason Graham, really cool player, high motor. He's basically, he's basically a younger, better version of Braden Fisk. Like if I had to think of a player to compare him to, like watching between these last 2 years, he is like the hyper high motor, better hands, better feet, moving, better tackler than Braden Fisk. And everybody loved Braden Fisk last year when he came out. Everybody loved him when he went to Senior Bowl, his combine stuff. Well, you're really going to love Mason Graham then, because he can do all of that stuff and do it at a much higher level. So yeah,
Right.
he's cool.
Yeah, basically with him and Kenneth Grant also on this list for Michigan. Like we said in our offensive video, Michigan lost a lot of pieces on their offensive side of the ball, but defense, they have a decent amount returning, and we'll get into a few more over this video. But yeah, it's going to be really, really hard to keep them out of top 10 discussions despite losing all that they lost, including Jim Harbaugh.
Right.
Just because of the firepower they have on the defensive line and
secondary
outside as well.
Yeah, you just wait. So and then the next guy, Deion Walker, that dude is so big. Oh my gosh. 6'6", 350. And it's kind of funny because you like watch like Chris Jones and like those types of guys that you watch on Sunday, and you see how they make the other team look small. Well, Deion Walker is like playing with a bunch of children. It's crazy how big he is. And he's very comfortable actually moving. He's a physical beast. He's got huge length, of course, for his size. But he also then is a good athlete. It's so crazy for his size to be so athletic. If you're going to base anybody in this draft class on just like projection, like they did with Trayvon Walker, this is the guy to base on projection alone. Like if he came out this last year, he could have gone top 5 because of the projection that you can see just by size and athleticism alone.
Out of any position, it doesn't matter if we had to predict like who's going to be in our top 5 prospects this time next, or not this time, but when we're doing the draft scouting for next year, these two are the safest bets in my eyes.
Oh yeah.
Obviously Mason Graham, like you said, was number 3. Deion Walker could rise all the way to number 1 with his potential and his size. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and he can play from, he did play from one technique over the center to outside the tackle. Like he can do all of that and be productive everywhere. He's a little high. He's 6'6". I'm not surprised by that at all, but you can't stop him. Like he's just going to walk through you basically, and you're just going to have to get over it. It's kind of one of those things. So yeah, he's a really polarizing athlete, polarizing prospect for sure. And then I'll jump to Howard Cross, the third out of Notre Dame. He's not as big. He's only 6 foot 288. I think, it gives him the opportunity to be a lot quicker though. His first step quickness, his, coming off the ball, his hand movement. He's a really good like stunter and blitzer and mover because of it. And so he could fit into like the build of, okay, this guy, situational pass rusher that could play some 3 technique for us on first and second down. That's the problem though, is that, you don't know if he can play in the run game as much because of his size, but he's not bad actually on first and second down. He's just a little small, and I would love to see him put 20 pounds on and be able to split double teams better. He's got really good lower body strength, but the size alone hurts him a little bit. So, and then Tyleek Williams out of Ohio State, 6'2", 290. Kind of doesn't really, so like they just had a guy that was about that same size go in this last draft, and Michael Hall Jr., but this is the guy that's much better in the run game. He has that ability while also being a good hands types of pass rusher. He uses his hands really well. He's a lineman versatile, and so that's one of the things. But he created like sacks and stuff, but he doesn't have that many pressures. And I thought that was interesting. Like when he gets home, but when he doesn't, he's just stuck at the line of scrimmage basically. So yeah. And then Dante Corleone from Cincinnati, he is the wide-bodied one tech. You know, like you think of Vita Vea. He's not that tall. Yeah, Vita Vea, Haloti Ngata. He's not that tall as those guys, but he is just as wide. And so he kind of plugs those holes in the inside, makes it hard. He was 18th on the PFF grades. He's been doing it for a while, playing, and he's a very violent player. Like when he throws his hands and when he gets after it, gets into tackles, he's going to bring it. So he's a really fun player because of that. Probably outplays his like athletic ability just by being such a high motor, violent type of guy. And then Anais Peebles out of Virginia. He's not actually out of Virginia. He was out of Duke, transferred to Virginia Tech. We'll see him play for Virginia Tech this year. High motor and productive in pass rush, mostly on stunts. I see him being more situational pass rusher than anything, but he could kind of develop. He had to play next to a really good Dwayne Carter at D tackle last year. Kind of outshined him, of course, but he's going to be a good player. Older and not spectacular was what I said, though, just because he just has not done it at a high level consistently. So, And then I'll let you get this one.
Yeah, Walter Nolan.
Yeah.
He was the former number 1 overall prospect in the 2022 class, that historic class that A&M had. Obviously, they botched the growth and development of the team, but he was the top transfer, and he goes to Ole Miss, and he's just going to be sensational.
Dustin, our one of our close buddies, and he'll be on the podcast during the educational videos, but Walter Nolan, he's a A&M graduate. And his words, not mine. Dustin said, pass rush was huge, didn't miss many tackles, applied pressure well on the run and the pass. He said that A&M wasted his talents. And then he asked me, he said, why is Walter Nolan even on a possible dark horse list? And I'm like, well, because he's probably the 5th, 6th defensive tackle in this class ranked right now, which is crazy. Absolutely insane, because he hasn't done it. A&M didn't help him in that, first off. Second off, he has all the talents, and now he's going to Mississippi, who just added so much defensive line talent. It's insane. And so Walter Nolan just is going to benefit so much from being there rather than at A&M. He will be a top 3, 4. I think he'll be top 3, truly. I don't think he'll pass, the Deion Walker or Mason Graham of the world, but he will be number 3 to me at the end of it. And right now he's 6'7" on most boards. So that's why he's the dark horse. That's why he can move up so much. So
yeah. And the biggest thing is because of how deep it is at the top with all these defensive players. It's more about just how high can he go in the first round. And so, right now he'd probably be fringe first.
Yeah.
And that would be purely based on potential. But once you put the production with it, then that's what vaults you closer to the top 10, which I think he's capable of this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So now we get to the fun position. And the number 1 overall player on most boards is James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. He's, every bit deserving of that watching his film. I mean, 6'5", 240. He had 9.5 sacks this year. He has amazing hands. I mean, he has amazing hands. That's the first thing that jumped off. And then, of course, being the athlete that he is, you should have a quick first step. Well, he has that. And most guys that go number 1 overall at D end will. lateral quickness is my favorite attribute by far. He basically teleports. When he jumps, he teleports around tackles. Tackles, you know how like tackles when they have you and they go to throw their hands and then you're behind them and then they fall forward.
Right.
He did that probably 3, 4, 5 times, and he just made them look silly. So, he made insane improvement from year 1 to year 2, and now he has an opportunity to make that same improvement from 2 to 3. And if he does that, he's bona fide number 1 overall pick for sure. So.
Right. Yeah. With him, and obviously he's similar with Mason Graham and Deion Walker. Like they're the 3 or definitely top 4 best defensive players in this class. All are top 10 overall prospects. It just depends on, if a number 1 overall pick, they need a quarterback, because sometimes quarterbacks overdrafted. We saw that this year. 6 were taken in the top 12. We only had 3 that had top 20, grades in terms of our overall prospect rankings. And then this year, when there's not that certainty, you can probably suspect there's going to be a team or two needing a quarterback that's going to push guys down. But, say the Denver Broncos had the number 1 pick, or, somebody that already has an established quarterback and they don't need to move on. James Pierce I don't see the benefit in moving off that pick when it doesn't guarantee you picking him.
Right, absolutely. And I think he is pro ready, and you need to get guys on your team that are going to make a difference, and he will make a difference. So, Harold Perkins is a little hard because he played a lot of inside linebacker, and it makes it difficult because I'm going to try to say that he's probably going to be more comfortable at inside linebacker, but what everybody wants to call him is edge. And so I was like, okay, well, he's the number 2 edge if we're going to talk about him being an edge. There's another guy that we'll talk about at linebacker that they are projecting to move to edge, but he played 90% at linebacker. So that's completely different. Harold Perkins actually played a good amount of edge. He's really good. And what I wrote down is speed. Dude is fast. I mean, he is flying, and he ran actually a lot of blitzes from his linebacker position. A lot of his sacks were wide open. No one even saw him coming. And so, that's something though that of course is great, but at the same time doesn't show off your edge ability.
Right.
Inside linebacker is probably my favorite spot for him though. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's similar, or not always similar, but Micah Parsons coming out. They didn't view him when he was drafted. They didn't say Micah Parsons, defensive end or edge. Right. They said linebacker. And so they were like, yeah, he's going to be your inside 140 tackle and then get 6-7 sacks. But Dallas was like, no, he's our best edge rusher out the gate. We're going to just let him loose on the outside. And now that's just kind of where he's permanently stayed, which that's not to say that he wouldn't be a good linebacker. He would be a top 5 linebacker if he stayed, but that's not where his money is made. And so with Harold Perkins, I think it's the wow plays. It's the speed, like you said. I'm not sure if he can be the 150, 60 tackle guy. I don't know if he's capable of that. And also, that's not, I don't think, how you can display his strengths the most.
I also worry about his size. He's only 6'1", 220, and that's not edge size. Like, that's a little bit more risky of a player if you're going to draft him as an edge. Like with Micah was huge. Micah came out and he was a massive guy. So when we thought, he could play inside linebacker or edge, well, it was because he had the size to do both. Harold is a little bit smaller than I'd like to put at edge. He's also a little smaller than I'd like to put it even Mike. He's truly an off-ball linebacker that, could run some blitzes to me. Had 5.5 sacks this last year, and I think that probably fits where he goes. But you never know. And he might put on 20 pounds all of a sudden, and then I'm like, okay, well, that's a little different. 240 is a big difference. So, but yeah, and then we've got Nick Scordon he was from Purdue and then transferred to Texas A&M. He's the newest edge rusher at Texas A&M. It's his hometown school. He went to Bryan High School, in which College Station and Bryan are next to each other. So he's basically home, and he led the Big Ten in sacks last year. Has tons of pass rush moves. He's a little bit older, He's a little bit more refined than a lot of the other guys on this list, and it shows. He's a very high energy, high motor guy, and he gets home. He knows how to get to the quarterback. So yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll jump over. Obviously, with Ohio State, they're gonna have one of the 2 or 3 best defenses in the entire nation next year. So you're gonna have so many Ohio State guys come out. But Jack Sawyer and TJ Tuimoloau.
Yeah.
Tuimoloau.
Yeah.
Just they're both going to complement each other so well and flirt with double-digit sacks, and that's going to be the driving force behind why Ohio State is going to be as good as they are.
Yeah, and I will say, like, both of them they're very similar. I think Jack Sawyer is better, but they're very similar players. They're both like the big. We talked about Braylon Trice last year. They're a little bit bigger. They're not going to be speed rushers. They're going to use power, and it's going to be closing a pocket real quick. They're going to be pressing offensive tackles into the quarterback's lap. And they're both, I think they're both 3-down type of players at the next level. I don't think they'll ever be impressive sack numbers at the next level, though, because they're not just like these freak athletes. They're just really technical. They're really good against the run, and they're the type of guys, Trey Hendricksons of the world, who turned into. Trey Hendrickson originally was this type of player that was, first and second down, he was stopping the run, and then on third down, he got a little bit after it, but he never had the sack production that he has now. They could be that. They could build into that, but right now, I see them as like a early career Trey Hendrickson, and hoping to get to that point in their career. So,
yeah, they'll probably be viewed as second round, day 2, steals, and be happy about that. I mean, when you have deep classes, especially at edge and defensive interior line, like, there's always going to be a need for that. And so just because you fall to the second round doesn't give you any cause to pause. Just because you're a first round pick doesn't mean you're going to be successful.
Right.
And we see plenty that just come out in later rounds that are just immediately impactful. Max Crosby comes to mind. So.
Yep, absolutely. And then you got Ashton, and I'm going to mess his name up. I'm so sorry, because it's not Jalot. It's Jalate, or I'm not very sure. I tried to keep up with that one. That one is really, really difficult because it does not look like what it sounds like at all. But he's he's a relentless. He had 11 sacks last year. A relentless type of player. He's really big, and he's going to be a tweener at the end of the day. But I think he can really pass rush really well against guards, and that makes him very important on third down in the NFL. Because when you can move a pass rusher inside and not have to worry about him losing the run game part of it, and he can still get after it, it excites me because he's going to fit a lot of different teams in that way. And then you got Princely Uman Malin. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Uman Malin.
Okay.
He's moved from he's transferring from Florida to Mississippi, and so add it to Walter Nolan, a guy that actually was pretty impressive to me. He has 2 brothers that are both D1 athletes. One is named Prince, plays for Charleston State, and then the other one is Princewell, plays for Nebraska. So they all are Prince. They're all Prince. But
right.
He lacks a little bit of quickness. He's a long strider, so he's not necessarily the guy that's going to get off the ball super quickly. But I think that since he's so good against the run, he can play all 3 downs. And that's always important when you go to the NFL. And then also his spin move is really cool. He throws people, and his spin move has beaten both guard and tackle at one point, and that's pretty fun. So that's something that you look for when you go look at highlights for him, for sure. And then the last guy, I can say his name. His name is Landon Jackson, out of Arkansas. I remember when he came out of high school, actually. But he is 6'7", 280 pounds, and he is long, lanky, but he doesn't lose what I'd expect you to lose, is the bend and like that, getting around the corner. He doesn't really lose that, which is kind of cool. He's a pretty good run defender. And, you just think batted balls. He's powerful for his size, because you're going up against guys that are 6'6", 350, 330. You'd expect them to you're not going to get them with quickness here. So his long arm is really good. He has certain pass rush moves, but I think that, his length is just pressure by itself, if that makes sense. Just being as big and long as he is, it creates pressure alone. So, yeah, look at all of we have a ton of SEC players in there. So, it kind of tells you what we were talking about earlier.
It was somewhat of a down year in terms of SEC last season. There wasn't the big team. And then also, Georgia was number 1 all year and then didn't even make the playoff. It was one of Bama's worst teams that we've seen in the last decade.
Yeah.
They made it just because they ended up winning the SEC championship, but in other years of the SEC, I don't think that they would have even been in that position.
Right.
Because there was a lot of teams with multiple losses. It's going to be even better this year. And on top of that, Oklahoma is not as good as they've been in the last 5 or so years, but they're still a top 20 program. And then Texas is going to be a preseason top 5 team.
Yeah.
So.
All right. My guy, Florida State, Patrick Payton. Was a little bit disappointing at times watching him play, but he also was surrounded by so many good defense players this last year at Florida State. He just kind of went overlooked at times. He's so smooth when he goes, and when he's really edge rushing, when he just it's a regular pass set and he's going, he might be the hardest person to block in the nation, other than Bradley James Pierce, because that guy's just different. But yeah, his speed for his length and speed just makes him so uncomfortable for teams to block. And he's only 240 right now. I think he can put 10, 15 pounds on his frame. He's a very slender build. So I think he'll probably put those pounds on, and I think he could vault himself up boards pretty quickly based on his just now will have production type of thing if he does that. So he's definitely one of those that could go either way to me. He could go up or he could go down really quickly. So
right.
All right. Now linebackers. I'll let you start it off.
Yeah, so Abdul Carter out of Penn State, they're just kind of churn out linebackers all the time. Abdul Carter is a guy that I heard somebody say is going to have a lot of comparisons to Micah Parsons.
He's going to move to edge. Is what they like. If you look at their depth chart, he's playing edge. He's not at linebacker. This is the guy that played 90% at linebacker though, and so I'm really having a hard time putting him at an edge, ranking him or talking about him as an edge when they have not shown that they're going to do that yet. 6'3", 250, has the size like we talked about to transition. Freak, absolute freak. Just to add to the Penn State freaks, because this dude is probably going to run in the 4.4s, and he's 6'3", 250, and it's just add another one. Put him on the list.
Right.
Multi-position player, hyper athletic type of guy, quick twitch, ability to take on and shed blocks really well at the linebacker position. I think that's very important, especially when you play for Penn State and they're very gap heavy. So if your gap's coming at you, you got to go take it. You know what I mean? And so he does that really well. And then he has the uncoachable traits that make him a first rounder. Just even if you just talk about projections, he's a first rounder. So that's what's cool about him too. So
yeah, and then also, like you said, there's so much depth at the edge. Like we could see 5 or 6 as first rounders, which is complete flip from what we saw this year, where it was pretty much 3, and then there was a lot of edge needy teams that maybe one would take a chance on, and that ended up happening. But then this year, it's just we have to rank him as linebacker 1 because that's more of the production that he's come from. And then also it's just he has to stand out because he's that good. We can't just be oh yeah, he's our 5th or 6th edge, because he is really, really good.
Yeah, no, he's awesome. And so jumping over to Barrett Carter from Clemson, he was the better linebacker for Clemson this last year. Jeremiah Trotter, great player, whatever. He's not as good as Barrett Carter is. and he won't project as well. Barrett Carter is like the off-ball linebacker, very fast, athletic guy. Gap scheme fit most likely, and I think that, he's really capable in the pass game, which is something that, I didn't see as much with Abdul Carter, which is why moving to edge might make sense. But Barrett Carter is very good in the pass game, very comfortable in space, can play tight ends, can play running backs. So I think that is helpful. I don't think that Clemson's defense necessarily helps out their linebackers because they run such a secondary heavy scheme. They always have 5 DBs on the field. So you don't necessarily see they basically just let their linebackers play in the box all the time. But I think Barrett Carter is a little bit more than that, able to be out in space. But yeah, so and then Smile Munden Jr. I know. Smile. That is Smile. Smile Munden Jr. He is staying at Georgia, while his teammate, we'll talk about in a second, is actually leaving. But he was somewhat productive. I truly was not impressed, is how I even wrote that down, not impressed. Needs to add weight to take on blocks. He has good recognition of plays. He's got quick recognition. But at times I'm just like, I need more. I saw some things on him, and it's like, he's not going to be able to get sideline to sideline. He's a middle linebacker, not going to be able to do that. He's, he didn't have a high missed tackle rate, which was really great. That part always makes me excited. But he also plays for Georgia, where he didn't have to make a ton of tackles. He's not a twitchy guy. So I don't see a path for him to being that exciting. And the next guy on the list, and Danny Strutman, he is exciting. That's we always talk about, the Kenneth Murray, watching him play at Oklahoma. Well, this is number 2.0. He's had 104 tackles this last year, and he was very impressive, insanely productive. Diagnosis plays so quick, and he is asked to just be a relentless motor in the middle of the field, and he's good at it. He's always in the right place. I would say that he's one of my favorite linebackers in this class. He's in the second tier behind the Carters up there. But yeah, he's exciting. And then Jamon Dumas Johnson was the other Georgia linebacker, and he's transferring to Kentucky. Kind of came as a surprise. He's been a 2-year starter at Georgia, so I didn't expect him to leave. But going to Kentucky, and I think it has a little bit to do with the fact that just it's hard to stand out at Georgia at linebacker.
Right.
They just have so many good linebackers, but they also have so many good DBs. They have so many good D linemen and edges and all kinds of stuff. I think he loafs too much. Loaf is basically where you have a change of speed. So say you think someone's going to make a tackle, or you jog while the play goes away from you, and you don't run. Basically, if like someone's holding on to somebody and they get out of a tackle and they break a tackle, and you're just like, oh, it's over, and then they take off again. He does a lot of that, and that always annoys me. That will always annoy me. I just feel like he doesn't have energy. I wanted more energy, I guess, out of him. He's not a trigger guy. He's not going to explode downhill. He's just kind of, nonchalant. I'm like, hey, like, you play linebacker. Let's go. Let's go. And he just doesn't do that. So that was kind of disappointing, but he has a lot of athleticism to make up for it. And so hopefully he just kind of gets coached into doing a little bit better of that. So yeah. And then our dark horse linebacker is Jay Higgins out of Iowa. Iowa has one of the best defenses in football. And this year will be again. Jay Higgins had 171 tackles.
Woo!
Yeah, led the nation in 171 tackles. 8.06% missed tackle rate. So basically, out of those 171, he didn't miss very many. Ultra productive. His biggest thing is, he lacks a little bit of athleticism, but he plays so hard and has such a high motor that it overcomes that. You know what I mean? And he brings the boom. You look at that picture, like he puts his helmet on you, and he's there to, really press into you. Like I said, Iowa has a lot of good players, but I love players that are always around the ball.
Right.
Always productive. And he does that. So let's see.
Yeah, then we'll go over to cornerback. There's probably about
I love this.
5 or 6
I love
guys
this, guys.
that we could just go right off the board and just be like first rounder, first rounder, first rounder, first rounder. We'll start off with the most polarizing one, Travis Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's the dual threat from Colorado, formerly Jackson State. I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts on him because I don't know if he has the tools to be a number one corner in this class or a number one receiver. But obviously, he's the only one that can play a high level at both.
I don't think that he's the number one corner in this class.
Yeah.
I don't think he's definitely not the
He's
number
truly
one.
not the number one, but it's just, I think he'll be drafted higher than somebody that probably deserves because the name. And then also, but at the same time, it's just like you can't.
He does have, though, I will say, like, he has like the length and those types of things. Like, he has the profile to be a number one, like, outside island corner.
Mhm.
He doesn't have, and I think that, playing for Colorado, playing both ways hurts him, at the end of the day, because he's tired. He's got these things going on. He's got more to think about. He doesn't get the same coaching throughout the week if you were just like focused on one side of the ball.
Mhm.
And not that he can't keep up with it. It's just you lose production for sure, no matter how good you are at football. One thing I want to show you that stands out is he had 89.7 QBR when passed towards. And that's a lot. He gave up 5 touchdowns. It's just he's inconsistent, but he's a Jalen Ramsey type player. Not Jalen Ramsey production necessarily, but like type. When something bad happens to Jalen Ramsey, it's everywhere because we know that he's such a good player that somebody got him. You know what I mean? With Travis Hunter, it's the same way. You just think, he actually has a build similar to Jalen Ramsey also. So that kind of, it fits in perfectly, but I don't think he can be that guy unless he focuses on defense. The next guy, Will Johnson, he's my favorite corner. That dude is awesome.
Absolutely.
He is so good at football. 6'2". He's basically Pat Surtain. Like, just sign it off. That's who he is. Like, you want to shut down Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain type of corner, that's him. 29.1 QBR when thrown towards. That tells you everything you need to know, 44.7% completion rate, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I mean,
just incredible.
Yeah, he's a good tackler. He's by far the best player best corner I've scouted in the red zone. He does not give up, and he never panics. Not once. I've never seen him panic. He could be beat. He's just like, okay, I'm going to catch him. Like, does not matter. And so that's really like an awesome trait. You get beat, next play, you get a pick. It's like one of those things, Yeah, I think that he has to be the number one corner in this class. I don't know what people are going to say about Travis Hunter. If he's going to be a wide receiver, if he's going to be a cornerback. Either way, he's probably a mid-first rounder at both of those positions. Just because he's good at both doesn't make him a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
Because you can't play him at both at the NFL level to me.
To me, it's similar in way different styles of play. It's just basically a positionless thing where Cooper DeJean, we thought was a top 20 prospect, surefire first rounder, and he falls out of the first round. And one, because of an injury, but also people just like, is he a corner? Is he a safety? But he's really good everywhere. Like, he's a great football player to have on your team, but it's just like, I can't have my top 5 pick corner not be able to shut down a wide receiver, even 2 on a team. And we've seen, like you said, the QBR difference. Like, say those numbers again, because that is the difference that stands out to me. And yet Travis Hunter will, in a lot of the public eye, be the top corner or one of them over somebody like Will Johnson or Benjamin Morrison. And those are guys that elite shut down and all that stuff.
Exactly. So let me give you the full stats. 50 for Travis Hunter, 56.6% completion, 414 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 89.7 QBR. So gave up 5 touchdowns, had 3 interceptions. For Will Johnson, 44.7% completion rate, 267, 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a 29.1 QBR. It's not the same. Now, I will say Michigan had a much better team, and that helps a little bit. While Colorado, had multiple losses and wasn't bowl eligible, Michigan won the national championship. That helps, but at the same time, if I just say, hey, that I need you to take over that side of the field, Will Johnson's the guy. Will Johnson is by far better than anybody in the last class or in this class to me at doing that. So, and then you said, Benjamin Morrison, really good football player too. And I'm 6', 185. This guy has challenges, has that like Derek Stingley athleticism. That's who I think of when I think of him. Like that, just like pitter patter attack. Not going to play wide receiver like Derek Stingley. But you know what I mean? Like that kind of style. And I have a hard time putting Travis Hunter above him also. On draft boards, Travis Hunter's going to be top 5. Benjamin Morrison might be top 15. It's not really the same though. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think of Benjamin Morrison?
I mean, he's really good. I can't remember the stat, whether it was completion percentage or passer rating, but it was absurdly low. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but that was somebody that stood out, and we'll talk about that going forward.
His change of direction is crazy. Like his feet are so fast, and that makes him, he's just always in the right spot, always making breaks on balls and stuff. And then you go to Tacario Davis. That dude is 6'4". He just freakish size. I really didn't like his film. I think that he needs a year, and his position on draft boards is based on what they expect, what we perceive to happen. But right now, he's probably not the 4th cornerback off the board. If he has the same season, I don't think he deserves to be the 4th cornerback off the board. But he has a lot of time. He has a whole year to get it all right. And his ceiling is insane. And that's why he's so high, because of his ceiling. Great athlete, length, but he stands too tall, lacks quickness, and needs to diagnose things quicker. So I want to see what happens with him. He gave up 4 touchdowns, had 1 interception, and had a 76.9 QBR. So not good enough, but he has the opportunity to be a lot better. Jabbar Muhammad, Washington, Husky, transferring to Oregon. Add another one. Oregon did a great job in the transfer portal. And he's a smaller guy, but quickness, those types of things, very technical. Everything you think about when you think of a Washington cornerback, and we've had some really good ones in the last 5, 6, 7 years. That's what he does. He's a super technical player, very smart, good eyes, good flexibility. And biggest thing with me is he needs to improve on his tackling a little bit, which he plays corner. Okay. So
with your, and I don't, know the snap counts or rates, but Jabbar, you said lacking size. Do you see him as being like the top nickel in this class?
No, actually, there's a guy a little bit lower. I think Jabbar's actually going to play corner. I think it will be a corner.
He'll stay outside, but he just lacks.
He's just 5'10". I mean, he's more of a Jair Alexander size than anything. But he could turn into a very good corner. Just he has all of the traits, and he's very technical. He's going to actually probably produce better than a lot of these other guys, Davis, but he just doesn't necessarily have the size to project the same way. So, and then Denzel Burke at Ohio State, 6'1", 190, solid size. One of the smoothest guys. He, to me, you think about the levels of throwing the football, he kills the intermediate. I mean, he's so quick in and out of his breaks, kills the intermediate routes, the short routes. He is just on top of them always. So that's one thing that I think is really cool, and comfortable out of phase. When you're in phase, it means you're right up on the receiver. When he is out of phase, he says, I can catch you. He doesn't look for the ball. He looks at the hands, does a really good job of punching. And so on deep routes, he can make up for it because he does not freak out, does not turn his head. He does not, commit penalties in that way. So that I think that I like that a lot about him. And then the last guy on this list is Sebastian Castro, another Iowa player. I had a really he plays nickel. He's our nickel corner.
Okay.
He's our nickel corner, or even nickel safety. He's not as big. I had a really hard time figuring out what I actually wanted to call him. If I wanted to put him at corner, at safety. Safety list is a little longer, so I was like, okay, put him over here. But I think that, he's such a good tackler. And that's what Iowa teaches. Like, you had a Cooper DeJean last year. Well, Sebastian Castro, great tackler. He actually had a higher PFF grade. He had a 91.2. He's third overall. He had a 43.7 QBR, 0 touchdowns given up, and 3 interceptions. That's out of the nickel position. That is so impressive because out of nickel is much harder to stop. I mean, they say that you, on a bubble, if it's a bubble screen, that's your guy. So
right.
If that guy catches it and goes for 60, all of a sudden you got that, those numbers go on your list. He had zero touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and it was really impressive. He has a really fun film, and he's great in the run game, wants to hit you. I think he just doesn't have the athleticism to project higher, but he's going to be really helpful on a team at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, you can get him probably in the 4th round, 3rd round, and at nickel, and help your team a lot. So, yeah. All right, let's see. Quincy Riley, Louisville. He transferred from Middle Tennessee State a couple years ago. He is I think he could turn into the number 1 corner. Not in in the class, but like he could turn into a number 1 corner, be able to really lock down. He had a 37.2 QBR, 36.5% completion rate, and he had 1 touchdown given up, 3 interceptions. Just really good football player, high IQ, quick diagnosis. He's a little older, so it makes sense, high IQ stuff. But his long speed is amazing, and he can do it all. Man, zone, comfortable, always. And then, the stats just kind of speak for themselves, 36 or 37.2 QBR, that stuff is not easy to get, especially, and I know he's in the ACC, but he is the reason that Louisville one of the biggest reasons that Louisville's defense was so good and Louisville made the ACC championship, because he was so impressive, like standout type of player, and he's not getting enough credit, I don't think, at this point. So that's why he's our dark horse. All right, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so safety, much better class overall.
Oh yeah.
We didn't have anything close to a first round grade on any safety. Tyler Nubin was, kind of worked his way up into being a fringe, but he still dropped as well in the public eye. But Malachi Starks is a first round talent.
Yes.
He's incredibly sound, technically sound, all that good stuff, and he's the number 1 in this class.
Yeah, lock it in. He's a first rounder. I don't see how he couldn't be. He can basically also like do everything. He's a free safety. He's a box safety. He's a nickel. He's good at tackling. I don't see he had a 5.45% missed tackle rate playing safety. That's awesome. He's probably got a little bit of issues with fit just because of that, though. But at the same time, if they run a cover 2, he can play halves. If it's a cover 3, he's probably the whole player over the deep player, but he's, get him close to the line. He's going to be an extra linebacker, basically, is how I look at it. So, yeah, he's a really good football player. And then Xavier Watts, he's the ball hawk. 7 interceptions this year. And he moves from, the reason he's so interesting to me is because he moves from linebacker to safety and then goes and has 7 interceptions and 4 pass breakups. And he's just high IQ and recognition player. His biggest issue, and it has to do with the fact that he used to play linebacker, is he missed too many tackles, and it's because he's overly aggressive. And when you go from like linebacker, you make tackles in the box, and there's, you have kind of only so much space. When you go to safety and you try to make tackles, it's open field. And when you're missing it's open field, like they can go anywhere, guys. Like,
right.
And so he misses tackles because of that. He's exciting though, and I think this safety class is so good. Like there are those top 4 guys right there. All of them. I love all of them. They're gonna all be awesome, and I just think some fits difference, but I think they could all be first, early second rounders. And so Kevin Winston Jr., freak athlete. Going to, great tackler, capable of covering to running backs and tight ends, plays free and in the box. And he is one of my favorite players to watch. He's downhill quick, hits, and just crazy athleticism, all in one little ball of awesome. Mm-hmm. So one of the cool players in this draft. He's from Penn State also. So, add another athlete to the Penn State list. But yeah, he's fun to watch for sure. He had a 0.0 missed tackle rate. He had 60 tackles with no missed tackles.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
Just always doing the right thing. And so he is one of my favorite safeties in this class for sure. The other 2 above him, I don't think Malachi Starks is getting past. I think he's number 1. But I could see Kevin Winston being the second safety off the board for sure. All right, your turn.
Xavier and Nwankpa?
Yeah.
Iowa. Just another Iowa defensive player. Again, like you said, has been over the last couple of years one of the nation leaders in points allowed and stuff like that. And a lot of it has been because of their defensive backfield. And so another guy.
Yeah, this last year, Iowa had less than 10 points scored on them per game. Mm-hmm. And it's just because they had all of these DBs and all of these linebackers and just guys everywhere flying around. He was a 5-star, and he's a tall, lengthy guy, 6'2", 210. I haven't seen one of those guys since like Kyle Hamilton. I think Kyle Hamilton was like 6'4" though.
Yeah.
But yeah, he kind of feels like a Kyle Hamilton type of player. And we love how Baltimore uses Kyle Hamilton. I mean, they love putting him in the box, letting him make tackles, extra linebacker, and then also cover 2 half field. That's basically what you're getting here. Mm-hmm. That's the type of player you're getting here. He can cover tight ends and running backs, good in run support. And I mean, I guess the biggest problem is like his feet stop on tackling at times, but they have so many good players at Iowa that they're coming for help, And then Keon Sabb, he is the transfer from Michigan. He's going to Alabama, following his ex head coach or new same head coach, I guess, at this point. And so he's a cool player, but Michigan's defense was set up for their safeties to be too high free. Like they had such good D linemen and such good tacklers at their nickel and in their linebacker spots that they played the box with 6, and they just let their safeties be high, 15 yards off the ball to start the play. So with that being said, like he didn't make a lot of tackles. He wasn't helping in that type of run game stuff. I want to see what happens this next year. He has a 9.7 missed tackle rate. That has a lot to do because everything is open field when you're 15 yards deep. And so he's a very rangy, long player, but I want to see how he does in the SEC. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be a big difference. And so I want to see what happens. Shiloh Sanders, Shadur's brother and Deion's son, is the safety. He has all the things you'd expect Deion's son to have for a DB, right? Mm-hmm. Athleticism, intelligence, those types of things. But I think he's a little overrated based on the fact that his name is Sanders. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think he's more comfortable in zone than man. I don't think he can play man. He's a good angle tackler, but this dude does not wrap up. It is just like, what are we doing? Whole body. Just
another Sanders quality for you.
Yeah,
right there.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I said brings the expected things, but I think he makes too many random mistakes. Like he just not wrapping up, bad eyes at times, things like that. And so it just, I think that he's a little overrated. And then jumping to the Texas guy, who I actually almost had as our dark horse, but I couldn't put a dark horse nickel. I felt weird about it, Mm-hmm. But Jody Barron, he is one of the craziest players to watch on film because all of his tackles are on the line of scrimmage or for negative plays. Because
Mm-hmm.
he makes every play. He's a nickel, but they run screens, or he is the fastest at diagnosing screens that I've probably ever seen. I mean, he is on it. Bubbles, rockets, all of it, lasers, whatever you want to call it. He's on it. And so I think that really helps him. He also doesn't get blocked. He is really good at being agile to get underneath blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an impressive trait for somebody that plays a position like nickel or safety, not linebacker, those types of things. And he's a big hitter. He's a fun guy to watch. And that's why I almost put him as our dark horse. But it's like, he's going to play nickel. Certain teams don't play nickel. Certain teams, it's becoming more and more of a thing in the NFL, but like certain teams don't play 6-5 DBs,
Right.
So he might have to, he is a fit type of player at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cool picture.
That is.
That's an awesome picture. Next is safety dark horse Rod Moore. He is staying in Michigan. Him and Will Johnson will be next to each other again. Just a guy that is so smooth. And I just said, Keon Sabb, deep cover 2 type of guys. But this guy, his eyes are great. He's always on it. And he's always coming downhill, ready to make a play. It just very exciting player, smooth operator in the back end, never panics. He baits the QB. I've seen him, in cover 3. He was like acting like he wasn't paying attention, going this way, and then jumps the route. And it's just, he's good. He's just a good football player, savvy type of player, beyond his years, basically. And he's a really good tackler. And I think, to me personally, he's the top free safety in the class.
Mm-hmm.
True free safety in the class.
Right.
So.
But that just shows the complete flip, because safety overall was our weakest position. We just routed off about 7-8 names that are just like, they could be day 1, day 2 picks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's just like complete 180.
If you're getting any of those guys in day 3, I think you're probably getting somewhat of a steal. And of course, this is 1 year. We have 11 months before the draft. But so some of these guys are going to go back to school and some of those things. But at the end of the day, it's so much stronger top to bottom. And even after Rod Moore, we have still got safeties that are really good. Right. And I didn't even talk about them, But yeah, that was our defensive 2025 prospect rankings. We appreciate y'all being here. Please like, comment, subscribe on the video. Definitely comment. Get talking about who y'all's favorite dark horses are to improve their stock in the draft in this next year. We'd love to hear from y'all. So
yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Check out our offensive prospects for the 2025 class. But again, an overview. We saw 14 players off the board before our first defender in this 2024 draft. So complete opposite.
Oh yeah,
I don't know the top of my head the most defensive players ever in the first round. But this class is capable of flirting with that record, if not surpassing it. Just like the NFL offensive first rounder
last year
record was broken.
Mm-hmm.
So massively exciting. It's not a sexy draft in terms of the skill players, the fantasy players, at least from the wide receiver and quarterback positions. But defensively, there's a lot of just ballers that are going to make your team better. That's why we had to spend so much time on this one, just because there's just so many good players returning to school this year.
Yeah, absolutely. But we appreciate it, and we will see y'all next time.